What I've been working on for these past couple days and videos, as you might see, is the sun on the van here. Um, Trying to make it not just one flat color. We're adding multiples. Um, I went around and kind of fixed some things on it and added some silver to it, and I'm liking the way it looks right now. There is a couple things we got to do to it, but those are going to be towards the end when I get everything else done. We're going to end up pinstriping and making some shadows and shading and doing some highlights in that as well. But I need to pinstripe it first before I do all the shadows and shading, because you want that stuff to be on the very bottom as far as the pinstripe goes. Same thing with the palm tree. It's going to get some highlights and shadows and pinstriping along with that. So we're going to leave that to the very end because I'm sure there's going to be other things that we're going to have to do some fine tuning on. So it's not a big issue. It's just always like leaving that stuff for the very last part. So in this video, I'm going to be focusing on another element to this, I guess you would call mural, and that is going to be this flying eyeball. And I want to walk you through how I did this. It's kind of a mess around here, so just ignore the mess, but this flying eyeball is on gold FBS masking vinyl paper. That's what I use to mask stuff off if I need to actually plot something or cut something out. This one in particular, all I did was do a drawing on a normal piece of paper, and then I fine-tuned it with a pen, and then I stuck some graphite paper behind and I put it on this vinyl that I had laying around, and I just traced it, and it pretty much just transfers over. That graphite paper is amazing when you're transferring stuff. You can use it on other pieces of forms of paper to transfer, or you can do it on a vehicle like this and chalk. I know they've got multiple different colors. I've got white and black that I mainly use of that graphite. It wipes away real easy. Simple to use, so that's what I did here. And then I went around with the razor blade and I cut everything out. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put some transfer paper over top of it, and we're going to get it stuck over there by that sun. I'm going to show you where I'm thinking about putting it. And this is something that's going to be actually have a little bit of color to it, but I'm thinking something like this. So it's got that kind of an angle. It's not huge, but it's definitely big enough for it to be seen. And like I said, it's going to be color. So like the eyeball portion here is going to be white, obviously, and you got the red veins. The center circle is usually the color of the eye, and then the middle's black. But I'm going to leave this in here, and I'm going to use the outside, the van color, to make that just come through as the blue. And then the wings are going to be kind of like a yellow goldish color, and then there'll be shading and stuff in there. So I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get this, put some transfer paper on this and get that laid up here, and I'll come back in a minute. So I got it placed. Not much to it, just transfer paper, peel it off, make sure you measure everything right to where you want it. I wanted to put it kind of at an angle to make it look like it's kind of flying, so that was the idea behind that. So next, I'm going to start weeding all this stuff out. I'm going to pretty much save everything. So like when I take the eyeball out, I'm going to save it. When I take the wings out, I'm going to save it, because I'm going to use that stuff for shading and shadowing, and I need the eyeball placed back in for when I do the wings, because these are going to be yellow, this is going to be all white. So I need to put everything white first to cover this background blue. So just putting white down as a little bit of a layer barrier will actually help, and not, you don't have to waste so much paint when you're airbrushing. That's just a little trick, and it helps to get that true form of color that you're spraying as well. So I always put white down first if it's not already a lighter white or a lighter color. That way I don't have to sit there forever and pound my color on here and build up. Just a couple of layers of white, and then get everything covered. Then I'll start putting like the eyeball back in, and I'll start doing the wings in like yellow, and I'll individually cut these feathers out and do the shadowing and drop shadowing and all that stuff. And then lastly I'll do the red, and then the black will be last, obviously. But this ring inside of here is going to stay blue. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to show you guys what it's going to look like along the way. Alright, so I've got a fresh X-Acto knife. As you can see, I've already boarded off my vinyl. I do that on pretty much everything I do because I never want to risk getting overspray on everywhere, because you'll create a square or whatever your outline is, because overspray will get on stuff. So you always want to kind of completely mask everything off correctly. And then we're going to start picking this stuff out. And with this being on a vehicle, you want to be careful. That way you do not get into the paint on the vehicle. So just take your time. This gold mask, FBS gold mask, is really good. It likes to stick on everything though, especially a prepped surface. So it sticks really well, and it's really thin, so you gotta be careful not to tear it. Alright, so like I said, we're going to be reusing this stuff, so I'm just going to set this aside over here. As nice, not really pushing it down because I need to get it back up. And then we're going to do the wings. These are going to be a little bit trickier, because I do believe I cut this one out as a singular wing. Not that I was trying to. So be really careful. Yeah, I should have just cut that out as a whole wing instead of individual. That's fine. Well, like I said, we're going to save it over here, so it sticks to everything when you don't want it to. And then these should be a whole. The rest of it should be whole, because I caught myself. What I did was, like, I ended up doing this individual, and then I caught myself. I was like, oh crap, I don't want to individually cut these until I'm ready to stick them back on. So I believe, oh, see, I just tore that, so be really careful not to do that. There we go. Got that out. That was one piece. Stick that over there. And a lot of times this isn't going to be, unless the computer cuts it for you. I individually cut all this because I drew it, so it wasn't a stencil a computer could cut. If a computer cuts it, it'll be a lot easier to pull, because it'll make an exact cut, because it knows how deep it should go against the vinyl, and all the settings are there. But with me cutting it by myself, I want to just be really careful to get a clean edge right here. That way I don't want to tear it. Might seem like a lot of prep work in the beginning, and it is. It's not, you know, it's a lot of prep work actually, but it will save you a ton of time as long as you take your time and do everything like you need to do it. Oh, see, like right there, it did not get cut as well. So I'm just gonna finish it. All right. I'm gonna put a piece of tape there just in case. So I don't want paint to peel up there, and I know I have an area right here. I don't want tape or paint to go underneath that tape. So what I'm gonna do is kind of just block that off. That's all I'm doing. And I want to make sure all your edges are down. And now we're ready for the base coat. So I've got white already mixed up in my airbrush. And right now it's pretty much high blast, which I don't want it to, because I'm trying to prevent overspray from going everywhere still. So I'm going to lower the air pressure on my MAC valve. This is what we call a MAC valve, that you can adjust your air pressure. It's kind of like a regulator. So the key to doing something like this, to where you have something masked off and you're putting your first layer of paint down, you don't want to really go hogging on there. You kind of want to build it up. That way the paint has time to settle. There's not going to have anything creep up underneath of it, and it's not going to be fully wet. So you just want to come through here, kind of just give a dusting, your first coat. I'd say it's pretty good for your first. You always want to hit it with a little bit of air. You can check it with your fingers around on the tape to make sure it's dry. And once it's pretty, it's solvent based. All I use is House of Color. If you haven't watched my videos in the past, so everything's solvent based. So solvent dries pretty fast. Even when it's winter time here, it's about 65 in the shop today, which isn't too terribly cold, but it's not like warm. And it still dries super fast. So as long as you're using a solvent-based paint, it's gonna dry super fast for you. Don't worry about that noise, it's just my compressor kicking on. That is running my airbrush right now. Alright, so I've got everything pretty much covered like I want it, like I need it. Besides the eyeball. The eyeball, like I said, is going to be obviously bright white, so we do need to make sure and do a few more passes on it, just to make sure it has no blue coming through it. So I need to mix up more paint. So I'd say probably another 1 or 2 coats on the eyeball part to kind of get that fully covered. Then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and do the black inside of it. And then we'll move on to the wings. Another thing I need to do is with the wings is the tips of the wings are a little bit brighter. They're not fully colored, so I want to kind of hit those one more time too, because we're gonna let the yellow paint hit them barely, but we want the tips to be a little more brighter. So we're going to put a little bit extra white down here. Just kind of guessing where the middle is there. Not really exact science, but got a little bit of dirt in that eyeball. This blue is a little hard to cover, so if it takes more than what you think, that's fine. If you are working on a blue car. You know, if you're working on any dark colors, even if you're doing just a panel, like a darker, you know, maybe a black or dark gray or something, don't be surprised if it takes you more than what you think. So, I like that. So now we're going to move on to that black center part of the eye. So we're going to focus on this center right here, which will allow us to have this for drawing. Because that's one thing, like I said earlier, this stuff, even though it's pretty tackless, but once it sticks, you want to make sure anything that's been painted is fully flashed off, because this will peel up a little bit. For me, it happens less times than often, just because I make sure my panels are prepped really, really well, and obviously I give the extra time to do the flash. So since we put a lot of paint inside that eyeball, we just want to kind of give it a little bit extra time. And this black iris center is going to be just straight black. Jet black is what they call it. So no colors, no nothing crazy right now. But black does cover really fast, so we should have no issues. No issues really covering. See, it's already pretty much dry. Black covers fast, so it should have no issues covering that inside fairly quickly. And I'm thinking I want to put, since it's pretty much flashed off, I'm going to put that around, especially the inside of the eye, or the outside of the eyeball, or whatever, you know what I'm talking about. The inside, the outside part of this, that way we don't get any black overspray on our white. Because the last thing you want to do is have to go back and forth on something that you did because you got overspray everywhere. So always want to just take a little bit extra time and just make sure it's good before you move on. You can even do like a test thing like I did right there. Just testing it out to see what it was going to do. So that was kind of, over here it looked like it was just not wanting to stretch. That's the only thing, if you're taking something off and on a lot, you just got to remember it's vinyl and it's going to stretch and it's going to lose its form. So with that in mind, just be careful and clean up your edges if you need to, because you don't want your colors, like I said, you don't want to go back and forth on your colors. You want to try to keep them nice and clean, the area nice and clean, and you don't want any leak throughs. So that's all I'm doing right now, is just kind of going around. I mean, I think the inside's gonna be fine there, so I think we're ready to roll into the black. Do a little bit of a test spray. I always do a test spray just to see how my fluid's flowing, because all my colors, they're not pre-mixed. So as far as reducer goes, I just want to make sure that it's going to flow and not kind of spit everywhere. Because if you get this stuff chunky and you don't reduce it right, it will throw chunks. So you want to make sure it's reduced and not spitting on you. That's just a bad day in my opinion. It's really frustrating when you get paint and you can't get it reduced the way you need it. And it just starts causing you issues after issue. I'm spraying with a custom micron, and if you know anything about microns, their needles are really, really tiny. So I always have to over reduce by a lot to get this stuff to flow through here, which is fine. It just takes a little bit of extra work is all. But I like to spray with my colors so they build. I don't like to just spray it and it be straight black. I like to over reduce my stuff, turn my air pressure down, and spray it and layer it up. Because you get, now obviously I'm spraying black that don't really go with this, but since I brought it up, with it being able to be over reduced, you're able to build up layers and layers and layers of colors, and it's multiple colors that you might put, you know, a different type of orange on top of yellow. If it's over reduced, you can get very different gradient scales of orange over top of that yellow. So not only do you know, it's a cleaner job when you spray and the paint lands on the surface, but you also get that gradient contrast of colors as they're mixing together. But if you want to go dark, you can go dark. If you want to light it up, you can do that too. So now I want to move on to the wings. Just going to clean my black out of my airbrush, because we are going to do these like a yellowish gold, and then we're going to leave the tips of them a little bit whiter. I'm gonna grab a picture to show you guys here in a minute after I clean my airbrush out. So if you haven't seen a flying eyeball image before, you will be able to see one here. So, a flying eyeball like that, this one right here, it's kind of got that yellowish, white, goldish tone to it, so that's what we're going to go with. It's almost exactly like the one I have here painted, but we're going to make a little bit different. We're going to make the tips of the feathers all kind of whiter and brighter than the rest of it, and then we're going to go in like the shading of these feathers and shade it out. It's actually the same. Now that I keep looking at that one that's on that poster, it's actually the same. The one I have here is the same. It looks like exactly the same drawing as or a reference I went off of for the drawing I did, which will make my life a little bit easier. So, and how I'm going to do that is I've got some chrome yellow and I've got just regular yellow House of Color paint, and I'm going to, like I said, I go with the flow. I just wing it, I guess you could say, until I get the right color. And that's one thing, as an airbrush artist or artist in general, a lot of colors you can buy like pre-bought, pre-mixed, kind of like this bottle right here. It's a little 4-ounce bottle that is like already pre-mixed of that color. I could probably found a color close to that, the one that I want, but I always like to make my own colors because I don't want it to match anybody else's that somebody bought off the shelf. And as an artist, you always want to, you know, teach yourself how to make your own colors. I'm not saying that just to be bragging or anything. I just think if you're familiarized with your colors and the color wheel, you can do some really cool stuff because you understand the color theory of everything. So I paint cars full time every day, and I am constantly using a color wheel to understand what I need to do to make colors blendable and match the car that I'm painting. And I'm saying this because if you've never gotten to airbrushing or painting in general, hand painting with like a paintbrush or whatever, illustration work, and you want to get into it, just know that you're going to have to really study the color theory and what colors do, how they complement each other, how contrast works, how you can eliminate other colors. You really want to get familiarized with doing that, and the more you do it, the better off you'll be as an artist, because you will forever have that in the back of your brain. And I think that's one thing that separates a lot of painters from the other painter. Especially me, I've met painters that don't know how to do any of this type of work, but yet they can paint a car flawlessly. They just don't understand how colors work or how the process works. And vice versa, I've met painters that kill at doing airbrush work or graphics or what have you, but they can't paint a car. So the more you get familiarized with your color wheel, the better off you will be. So I'm using this right here as a white just to see what it's going to look like. And I kind of like that. I'm going to bump it up a little bit more. What I did was I pretty much took this yellow, over-reduced it, and I'm adding drops of chrome yellow into it. Because chrome yellow is more like a school bus yellow. It's got more of that orangish tint to it. And as far as yellow, it's straight banana yellow. So it's a really bright yellow. We don't really want it to be orangish yellow, but we don't want it to be bright banana yellow either. We're trying to do that kind of in the mid area for that tone. And I think we're pretty much there. Yep, that's pretty much where I want it to be at. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this. This is now dry in the middle. And I'm just going to kind of just do my due diligence and cover this sucker up. I really don't want any. I'm going to turn my air pressure down when I do the yellow part, but I don't want any paint overspray inside that black. That way we always are moving forward. And I'm just going to do like what we call dagger strokes. So it's going to be just a little bit back and forth movement. I'm just going to kind of follow the outline of it. Just to get it there. Do the same on this side. And then I'm gonna really start looking at how these feathers are laid out. That way I can really judge where I need to put the other yellow. And we might have to go back through and really dumb this yellow down a little bit with some white and really knock that out just so we can get that nice gradient like I was talking about earlier for the feathers on the tips. But right now I'm just kind of going through and just kind of, I guess, blocking it in. While trying to leave the tips whiter. That's what I'm going to probably do, is I'm probably just going to blast a lot of this yellow, and then probably go back with the same yellow and just do the highlights of the feathers. It's kind of like an easy thing to do, to be honest with you. It's easier than to guess where these middle, I know where the outside feathers are obviously, but the middle ones, without actually having to lay down those vinyl masking on it, I can just kind of blast where I need to, and then at the end we can just really over-reduce the yellow that we got in here after we do our shading and everything, and we can just barely kiss those edges. I like how that's coming along. Alright, so that's going to be a bright yellow. But once we do all the shading in here, it is going to be really nice. It will knock that yellow brightness back a little bit. Got a little piece of dirt in there, but nothing we can't fix. And that is the flying eyeball part. So I've got some yellow left in here, and I want to keep this for the very end so we can over reduce it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab me an extra, I've got these little 2-ounce bottles here. I buy a bunch of them in a pack from Amazon. I think they come in like a 24 pack or a 50 pack and a 100 pack if you want to buy that many. But it's great to save your leftover paint. That way you can save it and put it back in your airbrush. They just come like this, and they have this really easy twistable top on them, so I'm just going to dump my leftover paint. It's always good. Obviously, I've got more than one airbrush, but right now I don't have multiple airlines hooked up. So if you can get multiple airbrushes and airlines hooked up, do it. That way you're not constantly dumping out your paint and putting more in it for a different color or whatnot. It just makes things a lot quicker. But since we're letting this paint dry on here, I don't really mind going back and forth a little bit. So the next thing to do is I'm going to start pretty much cutting this stuff out. So once this dries up a little bit more, let's hit it with some air to dry this up. And then we can start cutting out cutting the rest of what we need to cut out. Alright, got my blade ready. And what I want to pretty much do is, I'm going to lay as good as I can, lay this stuff on top of it. You do like a test run of putting it on there, making sure it's all good to go, I guess. Okay. And this might take a little bit of try back and forth to get it exactly where you want it. Because it can be a pain. Because like I said earlier, it does lose some of its strength, I guess you could say, as far as where it should be and how it should lay out. And see how I just messed that one up a little bit because I put this one underneath, but that's fine because we're just going to be doing these. So let's get this other one laid out. This one's a double piece one because I cut it already. All right, got that one in there, and then these can go. Oh, see, this one's trying to do the same thing as the other one. And curl up underneath of it. Sometimes it might rack your brain to get things where you want it. This one's a little bit off, but we're going to be cutting this out to shade it, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. So, and how we're going to do that is, shading it is going to be everything that's underneath the wing. So we're going to start from the top to the bottom, and we're pretty much just going to do, cut out like the middle section of this and do underneath the wing, and then so on and so forth. So it's a little bit of cutting, knowing that we are cutting on brand new paint. You want to be careful. But like this side, this top is already cut. So I could have honestly just went ahead and shaded it. So let's do that first. Let's go ahead and just mimic this side to the other side here. So actually, we're going to do this. We're going to do it backwards here. We're just going to go ahead. And cut these individually. Oops. You can also do this out of paper, which might have been a faster way for this. So, how we're going to do this is, we're going to just individually do each of these wings. Oops. See? That's what happens when you don't let it dry, is it gets... all this stuff happens and it peels up, so... let's see if anything else is going to peel up here. Nope. I think it's just that part that peeled up. But I'm going to do this because now we got to fix it. Is we're actually going to pause the video and see how it's just peeling it up. Yeah. So that right there is just proof that if you don't let this stuff dry long enough, it's going to come up on you. And I haven't had this happen for a very long time, so just take your time with it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the The paper stencil I made this out of, I'm gonna cut all the paper stuff out. And we're gonna do it that way. This side might be good, I don't know. Yep, well, it did come up a little bit right there, but. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna let this kind of sit for a minute. I'm gonna test it out real quick, just to see how well it's gonna sand. And what needs to happen is I need to pretty much feather edge all this out. So this is another learning thing for you today, is making sure your stuff is dry enough. I don't think I've showed a video of something actually happening while I'm filming, so this is something you can learn from, because like I said, it hasn't happened to me for a while as far as something peeling up, but I did kind of cover it up really quick. Now let's just hope our eyeball head doesn't peel up the eyeball part, because if it does, we'll just have to fix it. It looks like it's gonna be all right. So what I've got here is just a piece of 2000 that I'm just going to town on. You don't want to get, with it being fresh paint, you don't want to grab anything that's really too coarse. And when I mean too coarse, I have a piece of 800 and it would have probably tore this to pieces. So you really don't want to try to do that. So just grab something extra fine. I mean, you might be able to get away with 800, but I doubt it, especially something this small. It'll be too coarse to sand this stuff out like it needs to be. But it just goes to show you that you need to wait your times. Like I said, it's about 65 in here, so it's definitely not warm enough to tape over that quickly. But we'll get it fixed up here. We'll get it fixed up and we'll get it looking brand new all over again. Yeah, this side would have been probably fine, but it's got this little spot right here that I'm just gonna fix, since I've got to fix that other one. And then, like I said, we'll go to the, I'll just use the paper. I still have the actual piece of paper stencil that I drew everything out on. And I'll show you guys that way of how to do it. And let's just hope that the eyeball part is fine. All right. So spray it off, and I'm just tacking it down a little bit. And what we need to do is go back with the white and simply just build up those layers again. Because you have all these different layers, so you just want to repeat your process. This is why I'm always preaching on waiting as far as dry times go. That way you're not going backwards like this and you're always going forwards, but since it happened on camera, I will just show you guys the downfall of it. Because it happens to everybody. Don't think it just happens to one person. It happens to everybody. And you just got to fix it. So that's all there is to it. Just fix it and move on. And one thing when you're doing this, since there are multi-layers, even though it's feathered out pretty good, you still want to kind of do not so heavy. Because what will happen is, with it being fresh paint, is it will, especially if you didn't sand it completely the way it needs to be, it'll start ringing up on you and start lifting by the edges. And that is no fun to get out of that. So, just a little tip for you guys. So it's pretty much covered. Now I can go back in with the same yellow I had previously mixed up. And I can put that back in the gun. Make sure this is all kind of flashed off. It's kind of still wet up there, so I'll hit it with some air. Hit it with a little bit of air, always helps. I'm just really hoping this eyeball is fine, because that will be a little bit more pain in the butt to fix. Always test it out on the paper first. we're kind of back at square one again. Back at square one, and like I said, I'm going to go and get that stencil, that paper I made for the stencil, prepped up, and we'll just do these individually, and by that time this will be dry. We can go through and just knock it out. So this is what I cut out, just the wings. It's exactly the same size as what's up there. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to first place the paper on there, line it up, and I'm just going to shadow each of these edges. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go through and cut these out and shadow underneath these. And then that'll give that effect of the shadowing. And then what I'll do is I'll go back in at the very end and add that little bit of white highlight to it. So it's a pretty simple thing to do. Exact same I was trying to do with the masking paper, but I'm just going to do this in like a over-reduced black. I'm not going to make it really too heavy, as I don't want it to. Black tends to make like a brownish color when it is over-reduced against yellow, so I just want to kind of make it look like it's got some shadowing underneath of it without killing the yellow. So that's the whole idea about that. So first I'm going to put the paper on there, underneath the wing, do all the shadowing, then I'll individually do these. I'm going to do them in a row. I'm going to do the rows, and then I'll do the individual after that. So I will show you when So I went through with my light black, and I went through and I shaded it. You can see where I shaded it. And then I went back through with the multiple different yellows, and I just started shading everything, and then I went in with that same yellow. I had a little bit left over, and then I put probably a good like 25–30% of white against that, and then went through and made the highlights. They look kind of bright, but they're just the same yellow I used, just diluted down with white. So that's a really good technique while using yellow paint. Is not really use straight up white with it if you're doing highlights, unless you want them to really pop. But just dilute that yellow down with a little bit of white, and that will give you a really good contrast along with all the other yellows you got going on. It's just enough to make it look like it's actually white against that yellow. But I want to show you guys this before I go to the next step. Next step is I've got over reduced black, and I'm just going to follow my guidelines. That's the reason why I shaded this first, so I can go back and it just gives me a guideline to follow. You can see all that, and it's just a guideline, guys. So I'm going to go against those and just start shadowing again very lightly. I've got freehand stencils I'm going to use on some of it, and then the rest of it is probably just going to be freehand because I'm just going to follow those lines. So yeah, I'm going to do that, and I'll show you guys what it looks like. Alright, so I was able to get everything off, everything shadowed, highlighted. The white didn't peel up, so that was awesome. And then I went around the eyeball, added a little bit of red, some veins, and then yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I'm gonna probably highlight the inner iris with some shadowing and a little bit of highlights on this side, but other than that, it is done. So I'm gonna let this all dry though. I'm not gonna tape anything else over top of it right now. Don't want to peel up any paint, but want to show you guys this and end the video here. So I'll catch you guys on the next one.